Welcome to part 50 of Was I in a Cult? Quick recap. I left off talking about how my grandparents were very controlling over my life, and they came to the place where they were able to exhibit even more control and power over me once I was chemically medicated. As I've been thinking about everything, I have been realizing that sometimes I feel like some people might be even more apt to join a cult than others because of the way they were raised. I was raised in a very controlling environment where my grandparents were very overprotective and there were very many rules and restrictions upon my life. That didn't change when I turned 18. And it didn't even change when I turned 21. As long as I was living under the roof of that house, I was under guardianship, basically. Now that I look back, I realize how narcissistic my grandparents were, and they were just so overbearing that, I don't know. I mean, there was a reason why I ran away when I was 16 years old, and it wasn't just because I wanted to do what I wanted to do. It was because of the power and the control and even the abusive ways that they had about them to control me. I mean, they basically groomed me to join a cult by the way I was raised. I was never allowed to voice my own opinion or my own thoughts. I was always supposed to take on their opinions and their thoughts. It was very, very hard to live up to their image and what they wanted for me. And then when I went into the church, it just became the same thing. I mean, living up to their standards was impossible. It didn't matter how well I did in school. It was never good enough. Like, anything I did was never good enough. And I became this overachiever. I mean, I just had to win things all the time. I had to go do things and compete, and I always felt like I had to be doing something new, something that was going to make them proud. Like, that was my goal in life, was to make them proud. And until I got burned out and I was just like, got to the point of where I realized that I could never satisfy what they wanted and I could never live up to their standards. And then I just kind of gave up and I didn't care anymore. And that's kind of what happened in the church too. I did my best to be my best and be the best leader I could be and do everything I could possibly do. And then when this situation happened, and I realized that I was being falsely accused, and after that, all these rumors were being circled and circulated around the church about me, backsliding and using drugs again, which was never the case. I couldn't, my image was tarnished in the church, and it's like I couldn't fix it. And that's kind of exactly what happened growing up with my grandparents. Like, I did my best as long as I could, and then when I could no longer do my best, my image was tarnished and I could never live it down. Like, I could, never get to that point of where I was accepted and loved again. So then I just rebelled when it came to, running away from home when I was a teenager. And then in church, the rebellion was just like, I no longer cared what my leaders said to me. I no longer went to my leaders to talk to them or get their advice or their permission for anything. From that point forward, I realized, you know what, I'm just going to live my life. I'm done with trying to please everyone else. So I have to correct what I was saying in the last video. At the end of the last video, I said that my grandfather wanted me to sign for him to have guardianship of me, but that's not exactly what happened. So he was trying to get guardianship over me so he could control my finances, control my health care, control everything basically, which he already had so much control of my life anyways because I was living with them. But since he obviously was trying to get more control and power over me, he was having me sign these papers that he was filling out for me on my behalf, which, since he wasn't my guardian or anything at that time and I was an adult, I was 21, I would have to sign these applications that he was putting in for me. I wasn't initiating these applications. I was just, again, so medicated that I was just kind of like, basically existing, right? Not living. And he came to me one day and he said, I need you to sign this paperwork. And I looked at it and I was like, what is this? And he said, just sign it right here. And again, I know you don't just sign anything until you read it. And so I read it, and it said that that I agree that I'm like disabled and that I can't work. And I'm like, no, I'm not disabled. I can work. And my grandpa's like, you haven't been able to work. You're on such medication that you can't work. And I'm like, yeah, we're working on lowering that dose so that I can actually get to the point of where I can function and work again. So no, I will not sign this paper. And he was really upset about it. He was really mad because I think what it was is that this was all like part of his process of trying to present all of these documents and documentation to maybe the court or something like that to have them sign over conservatorship to him. Sort of like the Britney Spears situation. I actually was just watching that documentary a couple days ago and yesterday, and I noticed so many similarities to what was happening in my situation. I mean, I wasn't acting out like Britney or doing some of the things that Britney was doing, and I wasn't like hospitalized in the same way, but because I was considered, what's the word? Like, I was in a locked facility in a drug rehabilitation unit. Because of that, that's how this came about. This situation came about to where I was so highly medicated that I wasn't able to work. So it's a little different, but there were so many similarities when I watched that documentary. Now, obviously, I'm not famous and I don't have millions of dollars like laying around at that point in my life, but I will say that when I was younger, I played guitar, and my grandfather would take me to gigs with my guitar teacher, and I would play gigs where I was paid, but I never received any of that money. And he was in charge of my money at the time, and I remember whenever there was something paid, he would say, you think I owe you money? Like, you owe me money because I drove you to the place and I took out my time and gas to take you there. So why would you even expect that I would pay you for this? So I wouldn't get any pay from any of those events. I never even knew how much I was being paid to play with a band. So also, when I was younger, I was doing some acting, and I did actually get paid. But at that time, I was a minor, and I, again, didn't have any control over my finances, and my grandfather would never tell me how much money I made, and he would, if I did make some money on a commercial or something like that, he would say, well, how would you think that you have earned any money when I've spent all my money driving you around to all these auditions and all of these things? Like I don't owe you anything. Like, that's going back into, the money that it's going to take for me to drive you around to more auditions and stuff like that. So again, I never saw any of the money that I made, nor did I even know how much I made. I'm out of time. Bye.